All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Brothers and Boss Battles, a video game showdown, the podcast where my two brothers and I discuss video games, new and old. I'm Anthony, and along with my brothers Pete and Tom, we're hoping for another good discussion on this category of games. I say this category of games because, as many of you probably know, the way this show works is that we choose a genre or category of games and select 3 games within that genre or category to discuss. We'll review the game and all of the things that go into discussing video games, like its controls, story, music, gameplay, effect on the gaming world, and more. Once those 3 games are reviewed, those 3 games go into our special Brodown episode, where they go up against each other, and the brothers will declare a winner for that category of games. Last episode, we started our new category, a little bit different than a traditional video game genre, where we're discussing games based on 1990s cartoon shows. Last episode, we discussed South Park: The Stick of Truth. This week, for our second episode in this category, we'll be discussing The Simpsons Hit and Run. This game was released for PlayStation 2, Xbox, GameCube, and Microsoft Windows in North America on September 16, 2003. Developed by Radical Entertainment and published by Vivendi Universal. Help the Simpsons family and Apu discover a deep secret plaguing Springfield. And again, for those of you keeping score, The Simpsons was technically first released on December 17th, 1989. However, it really came into itself in the 1990s, particularly with season 2 in 1990. And December 17, 1989 is close enough to 1990 to consider this a 90s cartoon. So we feel it's well positioned in this category. Anyway, let's start off with some initial thoughts. Pete, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so I think I was probably the most excited to play this game of the three of us. Or I don't know, I don't want to speak for your guys' opinion, but let me say I think I had the most experience and love for the game playing it, around the time of its original release.
So,
So yeah, go ahead.
what did you play it on originally, and did you play it again?
Yeah, so we have this or had it and have this for GameCube, which I think is probably not quite as sharp as the other versions of the game. Um, and so we passed around the game, as you guys know. So I played this on GameCube again this time around. So anyway, back in the day, I remember, and my memory was confirmed by viewing our memory card or save data, that I had really played this game a lot. I think I had 93.9%. It was complete. However, I did not complete the final story mission. So this was like my, I don't know,
Moby Dick.
Moby Dick. Yeah, exactly. And happy to report that I did complete it this time, and I'll share more thoughts about if I felt like it whole held up and if I loved the game as much, playing it now as I did back when it was originally released throughout the episode.
All right, Tom, what about you?
Yeah, I'll try to keep this brief, but so I wanted to first start off by saying that, you know, I and we all were huge Simpsons fans, especially during that 90s era, like where the seasons of The Simpsons were, you know, undisputably the best. Um, so anyway, yeah, just, a little context there. So, we're big Simpsons fans. Um, and so with this game in particular, I never played it back in the day, even though we owned it. I think we got it for Christmas or something, and there was just another game that we got that I wanted to play more, so I focused on that, and this kind of just got buried in the backlog, and I never got around to it. Um, but so yeah, it was always something that I wanted to play, and if you look at people's opinions of this game online, the prevailing opinion is, well, first of all, that it's the best Simpsons game ever made, which is, it doesn't have much competition there, but still, I mean, that's, a credential for it. And but people like really hold this game in high regard. So I was super excited to get the chance to finally play this one, and I'm gonna leave it at that for now.
All right, and I will just give a couple of thoughts. I don't really remember playing it back in the day, in a full capacity. Again, we had it in our family home, but I played portions of it. I certainly did, but I don't think I really sat down to try to complete this game or anything. And if I did, it didn't leave enough of a mark on me where I remember doing that. So I was also interested in replaying it. I played it on the GameCube. Um, and there's a lot of sort of mixed feelings I think about this game that we'll get into as we kind of progress through this episode. Um, so Pete, I mean you kind of seem to have a strong opinion of it. What do you like? What do you like about it?
Well, there's a lot I like about it. Let me start with this, saying even right from the beginning, like you turn on the game and like the first cutscene, Homer's watching TV and like the Krusty Buzz Cola commercial comes on. Like it just felt like a Simpsons episode, you know? And they had all the original voice actors. I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But as Tom mentioned, we love The Simpsons, and I felt like almost like I was watching a Simpsons episode. And there's a lot of references and a lot of funny lines throughout the game.
Yeah, this came out basically right after the really good run of Simpsons, and maybe even a little beyond the really good run of Simpsons. So it really included a lot of those,
Yeah,
iconic
prime
main
years. Yeah,
characters and prime years of storytelling. We'll get into the story a little later on. I'll give the spoiler alert now, but we'll again try to, discuss the story. And I think it's important because it's sort of developed into a very Simpsons-like story, which I think is important to realize in the context of judging it. But why don't we, this game is, for those that don't know, it's very much modeled off of like a Grand Theft Auto type of game where you're kind of completing individual missions a lot in a car. That's basically what you do throughout. It's obviously not as violent as a Grand Theft Auto, but that game was popular, and I think this sort of piggybacked on it and just added in Simpsons characters and a Simpsons story to try to capitalize on that. And as Tom mentioned, it is pretty much it is sort of regarded as the best Simpsons video game, particularly on console. So, um,
yeah.
I mean that,
It's regarded as a very good game, just in general. Not to qualify it by saying the best Simpsons game.
yeah. Tom, do you think that holds up? And if not, why?
Well, you put me on the spot, but well, well, let's get the good stuff out of the way first, which there isn't much at all, really. But
Whoa! Boo!
oops, spoiled it. But yeah, so I mean, just want to echo the point that it was funny. Like, as I was playing it, I was chuckling at the dialogue. Um, it seemed like they reused a lot of lines from Simpsons Road Rage, uh, which was came out maybe a year or so before this.
Yeah, I had read
Um,
that too.
Yeah, but I think the amount of lines in Road Rage was quite small compared to the
yeah, there wasn't.
dialogue in
It
this
was
game.
really just like the quips when you were driving, like if you hit something,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
yeah. There was no like real story in that game. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, like a lot of the new dialogue was funny too. I liked that a lot. It was cool that they had the original cast, obviously, doing all the voices. Yeah, but so to get into some of the problems I had with this game, the main one for me was just real lack of variety in the missions. It seemed like you were always kind of doing the same thing. At least with it's like the game is broken up into levels, so
7 of them to be exact.
seven of them. So I mean, I got to the point where it gets very hard to differentiate level 3 from 4.
Yeah,
You're
I mean,
using a different character,
yeah, but
Yeah,
and it's a
you're,
totally different setting.
yeah, but you're kind of
no,
just
it's not.
rushing around in the car most of the time. You're collecting something in a car. So, I mean, we should probably discuss maybe what the categories of missions are, and we can
Yeah,
just
that's
throw
a
them
good
out.
idea.
I'm like, so there's very few on foot missions, which I will explain more later, but that's sort of like a big problem for me, and I think in a
Yeah.
sense sort of diverged from Grand Theft Auto because
Yeah,
I
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
you know,
That's
like,
why I have a real bone to pick with that Grand Theft Auto comparison.
yeah. I
I
mean,
mean,
I'm not the one who like made that up. I mean,
no,
it's
I know. That's what people say. It's like, oh, it's like just like GTA, but with the Simpsons instead.
yeah.
But
You know,
that's not at all
It's
a
not, yeah.
because
reality. So if
nine
you're a fan of Grand Theft Auto, don't think you're gonna like this game just
yeah.
because of that.
I mean, this Simpsons Hit and Run is essential. I would say at least 90% in a vehicle, if not more. You know,
Yeah,
as far as the
Yeah,
missions are
about
concerned.
90%, yeah.
So
I was actually surprised when when I picked it up again in preparation for the podcast. I didn't remember it being so heavy on the car
yeah,
parts and so light on the foot parts.
right. And I had, like I mentioned, I sort of lightly played it back in the day. So that not remembering and then coupled with the fact that of 20 years of GTA comparisons, I was like, oh, okay. So then when I played it, it was like vehicle mission after vehicle mission after vehicle mission. I was like, this is different than what I expected. But
yeah,
anyway, as far as let's go into what the missions
sure.
entail. So and just throw them out because I don't want to just sort of like
Yeah.
say all of them in case I
There's the
miss
one where
them.
you have to destroy the car, like
Hit the
you're
car to
drive
get.
into the car to destroy it. And then there's
Oh,
another
right,
one where you have to knock into the car to get it to drop an item. Then you have
right,
to drive over it.
right. So those are
Yeah.
two.
There was
And
somewhere
then
you had to get away. Basically, you had to like create enough distance from a car
that was
that was like
chasing you.
chasing you.
Yeah,
Right.
that was probably
I
my
mean,
favorite
another one
one.
was just kind of like a race. Like you had to
A
get to a
race.
destination before
Yeah,
the other car did.
Well, some were like timed races against the clock, right? And other ones were races
Oh yeah,
against
you're right.
another ones were
Yes.
yeah,
races against another vehicle.
a
So
slight a slight deviation, but
yeah.
not really.
So those are the five that I'm sort of recalling. I mean, whether really any others? I mean, there was like sort of
Sometimes, yeah, it was
collecting
like
ones.
collecting without having to knock it out of the car first.
Yeah.
So
Right. So there's
again,
a
just
lot of
another
variation we're
slight,
talking about here.
very slight
Or
variations.
It's like change the period to an exclamation point or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and now imagine doing that, doing those very similar tasks for every single character in every level.
Yeah.
yeah, but we
So
just named 5 or 6, and it's okay. Some of them are similar or whatever, but you're using different cars. There's different settings. You know,
yeah,
it's,
but I feel
Yes,
like that lends itself. That's cool because it's Simpsons. Like,
yeah,
so yeah, you're using the car built for Homer, or you're using their family sedan, or you're using Professor Frink's like weird rocket ship. So that's all
hovercraft.
cool because it's all references of the show. But
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there was some, variation in where you're driving. Like, so what I mean by that is like the setting, like you said, different chapters take place mainly in different areas. So I mean, yeah, there is that. Some of them do repeat areas too, but
I mean, you're mostly around Springfield.
well, yeah,
Oh,
but
you're all around Springfield, but it's
yeah,
like some of it you're like in the power plant, some you're in like on the highway, which I kind of felt was annoying, but and then other parts you're just sort of around the where the Simpsons live and the Flanders live and all of that.
yeah, yeah.
So anyway, so
yeah,
you play as the Simpsons family minus Maggie. And well, more specifically the Simpsons like nuclear family. So it's Homer, Bart,
The
Lisa, and
Nucleon
Marge.
family.
Yeah, yeah, the Nucleon plant. And so again, Homer, Bart, Lisa, Marge, and then you play as Apu as well. So the first four levels are, as I mentioned, Homer, Bart, Lisa, Marge. Then you play as Apu, and then you play as Homer and Bart again, or Bart and Homer, right? Yeah, Bart then
Yeah,
yes,
Homer.
yeah.
Yeah, and we'll get into the story and all of that later. But it's cool. It's cool being the Simpsons. They come with their unique sort of quips and characteristics as you play as them, and you interact with a bunch of other Springfield people throughout the game. Principal Skinner and Chief Wiggum and Snake and others.
Snake. Yes, a lot of snake.
Yeah, there's a
I
lot of
felt.
there's a lot of snake in this game. I guess it was a way to sort of make it like you're, you know, driving like a maniac and he's a criminal, so it's
Well,
like,
Yeah,
that's why they compare it to GTA.
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and he's got Bandit, you know. But I don't know. Going back to what Tom said about the lack of variety, like or variations in sort of the missions and the gameplay, I guess. Like it's true, kind of, but like a lot of games are like that. You know, it's like I mean, like sports games or racing games or any fighting games. Like even like you can make the case for things like RPGs. Like you're doing basically the same thing, but it's wrapped in something different. It's progressing the story. Like that's what a lot of video games are. And this game, you know, not to jump ahead, but I thought this game did a fantastic job in like difficulty scaling. Where the first couple of levels you're getting your feet wet, you were learning, it was
Yeah,
easy, and then it got harder, and then at the
yeah,
end it was very hard.
I
it
thought
did
it
for
was a
sure.
little too hard, to be honest, in general.
Well, see, I don't have a problem with the game being hard,
I don't
but
either, but
it's
it's
just,
like,
uh, yeah, I mean, it was like you're just doing the same thing, but in the next level, you have, 10 less seconds to do it,
yeah,
but
yeah.
that's not fun. That's just like the whole game is one big time trial, and
No,
time
but
trials suck.
And I
it
also
wasn't the
think
same. It wasn't the
I,
same thing. It was a similar thing that was a little harder. That was in a different setting. That you were using a different card, so that was maybe had a weaker armor and was faster, or worse handling or whatever.
Yeah,
And
but then you
yeah.
could
it's
just change
progressing
to
the
your
story.
favorite
But it's
car
just like
anyway.
every game or
But is it
most
is it
games.
is it really different to say like, okay, in this level I hit Cletus's like car to drop ketchup packages or whatever it was, and then the next level I'm hitting
Yeah.
something from the power plant to drop, I don't know, plutonium rods, whatever it was. Yeah, I get
No,
Tom's point, but
no,
I mean,
I agree that I'm just I'm trying to play devil's advocate a little bit, but I also disagree with the sentiment not completely, but partially.
yeah, I so
Because you're making it seem like it was the exact same thing, but you had 10 less seconds, or it was the same exact thing, but it was just a different car. And it was kind of a
No,
few different
yeah,
things that were wrapped up differently. And
sure, yeah.
it's just
You're,
like that's
you're
like a ton of
driving
different types
somewhere
of games.
else.
yeah, I mean, I guess it like this the fact that it was like a funny sort of Simpsons-esque story kind of helped too, though. So it's like you're doing the same things, but you are doing it with different characters against different characters and learning a little bit more about this mystery that you're trying to unravel. So, I mean, there is that. I mean, I honestly think the game would have, benefited greatly from just like maybe reducing this by a level, like maybe making it 6 levels and like, taking out maybe like Apu or maybe taking out one of the Homer levels or something like, like that whole first level, you kind of maybe could have combined that with like the second level when you're Bart. Like I feel like it tried to
Yeah.
set it up a little bit, but that and then just sort of start like 6 levels, but the same scaling difficulty wise, and then it just would have. I don't know. I just thought it was a little too long and repetitive,
Yeah,
but
that I agree with that. I put in in my notes for this game that I started it started to feel repetitive to me around the end of the third level, which was the Lisa one. So like I was having a pretty decent time up until then, but then, I was just like, okay, I'm really doing this again. See, the thing is, like, it's repetitive, but like, it's just not fun enough to just keep banking on that. Like, to just keep redoing the same thing, in my opinion, obviously.
Yeah. Okay. We're not talking about some of the other things though. Like these are the kind of the core missions. I mean those like DMV races, those kind of got a little tiresome too, maybe, but those were different. And those were
yeah,
really more races like within a confined track.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
Um,
felt those were like really hard.
yeah.
I
I
didn't. I
didn't
didn't do
spend that much
many.
time on
Yeah,
them
I.
because
I think I.
I
I
didn't
think I
feel
complete.
motivated to.
Yeah, I think I completed like one uh non-story mission in the whole game.
oh wow, no, I did all of them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we'll talk about this when we get to our replay section.
Yeah,
That's a
but then
running theme in this show.
yeah, there's also things to collect, which I thought was cool.
Yeah,
Uh,
that is cool.
That's cool. Yeah, that I'll give you.
So
Yeah,
there were
yeah.
these cards, like trading cards kind of thing, scattered throughout the level, and they all referenced something from the shows. Like Chutney Squishy was one of them I remember. Um, and yeah, whatever. Ton of other things. Monkey's Paw, I think, was one of them.
Yeah, no, that was cool because it's like when you have IP is successful and is, voluminous and as
Yeah.
The Simpsons, it does make it fun to kind of collect things.
Yeah, and a
No,
lot of those were not that easy to find. It was kind of exciting when you found one, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
I kind
I
of
wish
felt
I.
it. Yeah,
I was gonna say I wish I had a monkey's paw so I could go back in time and not play this game.
Oh, wow.
I I don't think they did a good job of sort of letting up on the missions to entice you to explore the town for purposes of collecting things, to be honest. Like I always felt I had to jump to the next mission,
No, but you
jump to the
never
next.
had to. That's something I loved about this game. It was like go go talk to this person, and then it was like you just look on the map or something and you find like it was very apparent what you had to do. You never had to like drive around for a half hour talking to random people trying to figure out what my next mission was. But so I love that. But also you didn't there was no time. Like you
Laying
could
the
have
groundwork for future episodes.
no, that's just not my style of game. I I like so to further this point, something I really like in video games is like you have a challenge. Here it is. Can you do it? Are you good enough? And then you do it and you fail a few times and you get better and better and then you succeed. And the next challenge is a little harder and you get better and then you just barely succeed in that one. I love that aspect of a video game where you feel like it's a challenge and it's more like, me versus the game and I'm going to try to conquer it.
So, what did you guys think of, the comments we're making vis-a-vis the controls of the game? And we all played on GameCube, so we're all sort of talking from the same spot on this. Because I
I
mean,
thought the driving was fantastic. The driving controls. I thought they were really tight.
I think it depended on the car you had. I felt like they made the cars with bad handling like too
Well,
bad of
that was
handling.
Yeah,
intentional.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but then like those
Obviously,
became useless kind of cars to use.
there's the one, the grandpa one was really hard to control. I feel like it was always like pulling to one side.
Like Snake's car was good
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think the car
because it
built
was
for
like
Homer was
yeah,
good.
the car built for Homer was really good. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No, the controls were pretty fine. I
yeah,
I had no
they
issue with
weren't
them.
horrible. I mean,
Sometimes you would get like snagged on something when you were
yes,
driving, and it was really
yeah,
annoying.
I
yeah.
think it was just yeah. I mean, that was sort of what like happened. Like I feel like the camera could get caught and stuff like that, especially when you were not in the car and you kind of like spinning around with your character if you're up against the wall. But again, you were so infrequently not in the car. I guess it didn't matter too much.
Yeah, yeah. The camera in the car was actually really good, like while driving.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
what did
mean,
you think of the controls when you were out of the car, like doing platforming and
yeah,
stuff?
I didn't think they were that good. That's what I'm kind of
Yeah,
trying to say.
yeah,
It was very clunky. It was hard to sort of gauge as a lot of 3D games from that era, and certainly before, but even that era was still, um, not perfect with that.
this maybe
Especially when your platform, it's like you jump, and if you're not, you really have to turn the camera to look at it at the right angle. Otherwise, I feel like it's so easy to miss the step.
yeah. This is probably an apples to oranges comparison, but like the platforming controls and cameras and stuff was light years away from like the N64 platformers we discussed. Like it
Yeah,
was
I
so
mean,
much better. Like I
yeah,
don't think it was a problem really. Like was it perfect? Probably not, but it really wasn't a problem.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, as far as the controls, I just sort of noticed that, like, some cars really just seemed like impossible to the point. It's like, why even include the car in the game if the handling
Yeah,
is going to
but
be this
that was
bad?
another
It's
great aspect of the game. There was so many cars and so many like costumes and all the stuff from the show.
yeah,
Yeah, so those things so the cars
the cars were
um
so
Nah,
central to
yeah,
the game though that it was more than
but
just a collectible. I feel.
nah, because if you played through the whole game with only one or a couple of cars, it would have been even more repetitive and boring, I feel.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
there was
but
the
when there's so
one
many cars,
mission where you had to drive the school, like
The
the
school
school
bus was
bus.
annoying. Yeah.
I thought, yeah, it was annoying, but like at least it adds something new.
Yeah.
yeah,
And I guess it's a minor gripe from me. It's just the controls really weren't bad for GameCube era, and you know.
yeah. So other things that I mentioned, collecting the cards. There were also these wasps that are part of the story, but they were around the levels, and you have to essentially hit them, kill them.
Well, they were
Um,
electronic wasps, so break them.
right, break them. Yeah, and like, so they would, when you did, they would release coins where you could pick up,
Yeah.
and there were other things like crates and stuff that you could collect coins, or just I think when you were in the car and you would run into a street post or something, it would be like a coin. You would get a coin, and then you'd
Yeah.
use those coins to buy those costumes and the vehicles.
Right. And some costumes and vehicles were essential to progress the story. So you had
Right.
to, it wasn't just all aesthetics or collectibles. It was sometimes you had to collect those coins in order to make the story go forward. And another thing with that though, it's so as far as the gameplay is concerned, when you're driving in the car, your car can get beat up to the point where you have to evacuate it and it explodes. And then in order to repair it, you have to go to like a certain section of the map and pay to restore it. And if you hit too many like people or made them or cars or things in Springfield, then the police would chase after you and stop you and like take half your coins, and then you'd be able to like go on your merry way. So, those are two aspects of the gameplay. I mean, I know I'm gonna get hit for this, but like I thought like the police came way too quickly, and like I wound up like losing so much from just having them stop me because I was being chased. And but I will say this, it did make for some interesting parts of the game because sometimes like they would come with police cars and try to trap you, and they'd have to stop you in order to take your coins. Um but there were ways to avoid them. So it almost added another element to some of the missions when you were trying to avoid them and complete your objective. Obviously making it more difficult, but sometimes you were able to kind of evade the police and still complete your mission. So that created some variety.
Yeah, or sometimes I would just, if I was in the middle of a mission, I would just exit the mission to avoid taking the coin penalty.
Ah,
Cheese.
cheap but smart.
Yeah. Yeah, that I didn't have a problem with the police for the most part. There was that one mission with Bard where you're like driving through the boardwalk
Yeah,
area.
that
Oh,
was the
that was
only area
so
where,
annoying.
yeah,
Yeah. It was like,
that was the
yeah,
only area where I felt like, okay, this is a little
Because
much.
if you slowed down to not hit people, you there was no way you were completing the mission.
yeah.
So it was like you just had to deal with them, then the police coming. And I don't know. Yeah, I thought that was later in the game too, so it really sticks with
Yeah.
you.
That was
The last
level,
level.
level 6. The,
Oh, right, the second to last,
the
the
penultimate.
penultimate. Yeah.
Yeah.
So another thing, did you guys notice that there was like sort of like this hidden vehicle in each level? So it's not like the vehicles you get from that you get, and then you could choose that from the phone booth. Um, it was like in level 2 there was like the crashed monorail. Do you remember that? So you could like ride the
Oh, that's cool. I don't
cockpit.
remember that from the game. I obviously remember the monorail episode,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's just another thing. In every level
How
there
do you
was.
how do you get those?
It's just in the environment, and
oh, so
I
you could
think,
just hop in because that
Uh
kind of was cool. Like you can hop into any car that stops at a stop sign or stops for like at a
yeah, that was
you
very
know
GTA esque.
yeah, a lot of them aren't like great, but was is that what you're saying with the monorail thing? Like you could just
Yeah,
get to it
exactly.
and
I'm pretty
oh
sure that's just what it was. And
ah
there was one. Did you guys? I think this might have been an extra one in one of the levels where it was like almost like a remote control race car, so it was like really tiny. Did you? That might have been in one of the hidden ones, I think, in
yeah, I
another
think
level.
yeah.
And it's funny because you feel like you're flying, like you're going so fast, but I think because it's just like the camera is like just so low to the ground, like it's
Uh,
actually just a medium
oh wow.
speeded car. So yeah, so like I don't know, I'm just trying to
yeah,
suggest that there's a lot more to the game than just doing same old missions but with 5 less seconds.
Yeah, I mean it's cool that the cars all had different stats. Again, I will say it again and again. I think the poor handling ones were a little too poor to handle, but they had different speed and turning or what acceleration, whatever it was, like the
And I forget what they call it, but like
endurance.
durability.
Yeah,
Yeah.
durability. So like, yeah, exactly. Um,
Yeah, so you could crash into more things before you exploded, or
right, right, and
if you
sometimes
if you had to crash into the car to make in some of the missions to make them not drop items like the catch up packets,
yeah, the one
then
where you had to sort of essentially beat up the car
yeah,
with
yeah,
your car, you'd want a strong sort of durable car. I remember the school bus was like good for that.
yeah, there were a lot. Fire truck, and I think there was one that was like an armored van.
Yeah. So there's also, we mentioned a little bit about the voice acting and
Yes, those are
and the
all the
sound.
original
Yeah,
actors.
yeah, I didn't realize it was all. So that's pretty cool. And then it's so it really lent a lot of credence to the Simpsons game. Yeah, I mean, they kept it very true to the Simpsons. I think with the audio and the sound and all of the collectibles and everything from the town. It was cool. Like, as we spoke about in the South Park episode, it was cool that you're able to kind of see Springfield and how,
Yeah,
everything was positioned relative to each other. All right, we should also talk about just like the how true the game stayed to the Simpsons and if that was a good or bad thing. So anyone want to give any thoughts on that?
I could say something. So, I mean, the story was, I say it kind of was similar to The Simpsons, but I mean, it was very outlandish, which, it, even like more so than a typical episode of The Simpsons would be. I guess it was kind of more like a
Like a Halloween episode?
Halloween episode,
Yeah.
just because, yeah.
yeah,
We'll
you're
talk.
right. I agree with that point.
Yeah, so but I do feel it could have very well been like a Treehouse of Horror episode. And not that it was scary, but just like it was a little bit more outlandish than even like a regular Simpsons episode, like you said, but it was very true to it. And I think the graphical representation of the characters in Springfield and the sounds and the audio all kind of contributed to that as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and the jokes and the lines.
Yeah, and I think that uh was important uh
Yeah,
to do. So
yeah.
what? You
I'll
want
say,
to
interestingly enough, on this topic, I think it was based. The script was mostly written by the people working on the game. Like they weren't the Simpsons writers, and then they just went up to um Gracie Films and Matt Groening for approval. And I guess to their credit, they did like they didn't have a problem. Like they weren't that critical. I guess maybe because the lines were good, but most of them they
yeah.
kind of accepted.
Yeah, again, I wouldn't have been surprised if you had told me it was written by Simpsons writers.
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah.
So we want to talk about our favorite quotes from this game. Should we do that now, or should we talk
Now,
about
now, now, now.
now? All right. So you seem excited, Pete. Why don't you start us off then?
Um, I don't know. I guess not necessarily the most funny, but the first that comes to mind was like, um, I guess in one of the earlier missions you had to get like the new like Bone Storm game or something, and like
Yeah.
off the streets or something. You were with Marge, and then basically the punchline is like, "Oh, if only kids would play more video games about sharing." I don't know. I thought that was such a Marge line.
Yes, i.e., the best character in the show, in my humble opinion.
Is that really your opinion
She's definitely my favorite Simpson. Um, I don't know that she's necessarily my favorite character in the game. I definitely
for the
relate
show?
to.
Yeah.
I definitely, yeah, I definitely relate to Marge the best, the most.
My favorite Simpsons character is Principal Skinner.
Yes, Tom, why don't you round that out since we've sort of broken off into a Simpsons discussion?
Oh man, it's so hard to choose. There's so many good ones.
Yeah, I think this it's not gonna sound great, but I think honestly, I think one of my favorite characters, if not my favorite, is Mr. Burns.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
so
doesn't sound great.
yeah.
No, he's funny. They're all funny.
I think Flanders is my favorite.
That's a good one. Anyway,
Speaking of
back to
the
the
Flanders
game.
is
Yeah.
speaking of the Flanders is I also like the line from Todd Flanders, and spoiler alert. As I'm kind of saying these things, we're kind of getting to the story a little bit, but um, yeah, that was about like the zombies coming and
Yeah.
that part of the game towards the end, and Todd basically says, "Oh, I hope my brain feeds a poor hungry zombie." Always thinking about doing good, even
Yeah, even in the
when he's gonna
apocalypse.
die. Yes.
I liked you can continue Pete with yours, but I liked one where s- I think it's when you're playing as Lisa, and squeaky voice teen goes, "Here, do you want to try a new crusty ribwich?" And Lisa goes, "Ugh, I'm a vegetarian." And squeaky voice teen goes, "Oh, there's no meat. It's just paste and MSG."
Yeah, I remember that. I think I had
Funny.
noted that one down too.
Some other ones. This might be my favorite in the game, but I actually I want to try to remember exactly who says it to who before I give some misinformation on this podcast. So why don't one of you guys continue with your favorite quotes?
Tom, do you have any?
I didn't write any down verbatim, but there's one
Okay.
that there's one that I remember where when you're playing as Bart, you go into Moe's tavern, and then Mo was like, "Oh, sorry, I can't serve you alcohol," and then Bart's like, "Oh no, I'm just here to buy like illegal fireworks or something." Then Mo's like, "Oh, sure."
Oh yeah. There's one time where Marge, I don't know the line, but she is talking to comic book guy and calls him Mr. Guy.
Yeah, and that's funny. First name comic book, last name
Yeah.
guy. I like so Chief Wiggum says this. I forget who he's driving with, but you're going through the level and you're like really going quickly, and he goes, "Strike two, running over an elderly person without a license."
Oh yeah. That was one of my favorites too. Yeah,
That's a
he's
really
like
good one.
I don't know. I think it's your Lisa, but he's saying like I can't help because like we're busting somebody on the three strikes law.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then that was the second strike.
Right. And there's another one. I think Chief Wiggum also goes to Marge, "For a busy housewife, you sure get things done. A busy body housewife used to sure get things done." That body is very important to that whole sentence. Otherwise, it just sounds like a declarative sort of boring statement,
Yeah. Yeah.
or a compliment or something. And then my
Cletus.
sec yeah, the Cletus one is great. He says to so I think this might be Marge as well. Marge goes to him about like a crop circle image, and he goes, "My granddad saw one of those crop circle things you were talking about, but he's with Allah now."
It's so great. That to me that is like quintessential Simpsons, or like
Yeah,
he could have just said God and that would have been like a throwaway line, but
yeah,
it's just changing that one word and it's
yeah.
like
Because
one
it's
of the
like,
best lines in the game.
yeah, it's like it's
Yeah,
just such a
slack-jawed yokel, like
just
yeah.
such a juxtaposition of what would be in reality, like of someone saying, but it's like it's so
Yeah.
funny.
That was one of my favorites also.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
then
that was good.
the one optional race that I did play, Ralph Wiggum starts it off like instead of going 3, 2, 1, he goes 12, 6, 1, go.
Yeah, I know. And then he has like one where he's like 111 or
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
that. Like
So that I don't know. That's kind of funny.
yeah, there's a lot of great lines.
Yeah. Anyway, oh, and there's one more I have to say. I think it's when you're bored and you go to Professor Frank, and it go because there's the whole Truckosaurus thing, and he goes, "Truckosaurus is some kind of truck and dinosaur. I never would have guessed."
Yeah, I had noted that one down too. That's funny.
Oh, and then there was also the comic book guy one where he's sort of like, where I don't know, he's like done with a mission or whatever, and he goes, "Now to go online and bid $1,000 for itchy and scratchy corn cob holders."
Yeah, I think he's like video games. That's a waste of money.
Yeah,
And
yeah, right.
then it's like yeah,
That setup is makes it better than what I
yeah,
did,
yeah.
but yeah. All right, that was fun. What else about the game that you guys think should be discussed?
I'd like to get into the final level a little bit, and
Wait,
I
before
think
you go on,
Not
Would
story
it be
wise.
well, I
Well,
was gonna say, would it be easier to let the listeners know of the story before you say this, or can you go through your gripes with it without really discussing too much of the story?
yeah, I could I could discuss my gripes without the story knowledge, I think. So anyway, this is yeah, so the final level you're playing as Homer again, and basically it has you driving between the power plant and the school. So, you play the first mission in the level and you do that and it's like, okay, cool. And then you start the next mission and it tells you to go back to the power plant and pick up the same item and bring it right back to the school. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it again. I complete that one. Then you get to the third mission,
And guess what?
and guess what? It's the exact same thing. And
But you had to
get
do it with Grandpa's car.
right, right.
Well, you
To make it
needed a different car each mission, right? Because of what happens to the car when you get back to the school. No,
Oh,
I thought it.
I
See,
know
it
what
would
you're. Yeah, I know what you're
it would
saying.
have been
It,
easier to discuss the story first, but go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think yeah, I think
I mean,
first
just
well, whatever, but let me
Yeah,
finish
go
my
top.
point.
Sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So like at that point I was like I was actually like flabbergasted that they were making me do this for a third time. And I think there's actually one additional time that you have to do it too, right? So isn't it like four times in that in that level
I
rerunning
thought it was three, but
essentially?
it could very well be four. Yeah,
Yeah,
because no video game in the world ever made you do the same
regardless.
thing 3 times.
Nah, not like that. And just, I feel like the final level was a really
It was just thrown in there. Come on, do this thing 4 times so we could wrap up the story.
yeah, I don't know, maybe. I just feel like it was a very fitting conclusion to this game, this kind of game where it was just repetitive all around. So, you know what? For the final level, we're gonna just repeat the heck out of it.
Ramp up the
I,
repetitiveness.
yeah, I had a real problem with that final level. That's just comes across as really lazy to me.
Yeah, I could see that because for a game that could possibly be criticized for being repetitive, it really was like the same thing. Like you wouldn't leave
Yeah,
and especially being the last level, it's like the thing you'll probably remember most.
yeah. Jokes aside, I did feel the same way. Like I was kind of surprised. Like, okay, I'm doing this again and again, like right after each other,
On the bright side, you got really good at driving that route.
which you had to do because the last challenge was quite hard. The last
Yeah,
mission was quite hard.
yeah, it was. Oh, I think the last mission you actually have to. Do you have to drive back twice or something?
I think
Something
you
like
do
that.
have to drive back and forth. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that was a nice challenge put forth that
It was
I
challenging.
was
I'll give them
determined
that.
to complete.
It was challenging. So I didn't beat that last mission, and there's a couple of other yeah. There's a couple of other. We should maybe talk about the missions, like what we liked, what we didn't like. But there was one mission in each of the last 3 levels that I did not beat, and they do let you progress without doing that. But obviously, I like the fact that it is in a way a collectathon game and a completionist sort of game. So they're not going to give you obviously the benefit of completing a mission that you didn't, but they won't totally let it bury you where you won't be able to like see the whole story. So I mean I feel good on their part to an extent. And I'm not proud of it, but I wish I just I just didn't like the game enough to kind of keep going back and trying to beat them. Though I do know how the game ends.
That's
Yeah,
a good segue into the story, maybe.
What do you want to talk about? You want to talk about yeah, let's talk about the story. We could always talk about the missions after that. I think it'll be cleaner to just talk about that way. So I'll go over just sort of the basic plot and just to illustrate how Simpsons-esque it is. And you guys could you know add some embellishments and color to what I say. But it starts out you're Homer. You kind of notice these mechanical wasps all around Springfield. You don't really know what they're for. That whole first level is it's sort of like a tutorial that isn't a tutorial, but like you're just sort of learning the controls and just setting up the story, and it's relatively simple. Um, that progresses then to the second level. Your Bart, your main mission in that is for yourself to get a copy of the Bone Storm video game. It brings you to like Professor Frink's lab, and then eventually at the end of that, and again, spoiler alerts, because where the story starts picking up. At the end of his level, you get abducted by an alien spaceship. The third level, you start off, you're Lisa, and you're trying to uncover what happened to Bart because Bart's missing at this point. So you progress through her story and gain a little bit more information of that. The fourth level, you're Marge. You kind of draw a connection between the Buzz Cola that's being sold at like Krusty Burger and the Quickie Mart, and all of these weird things that are happening in Springfield, including Bart going missing and these mechanical wasps and all of the usual. The game has the characters, and therefore you believe that all of the usual suspects would be behind it, such as Mr. Burns, for example, and and so forth. But you find out that it really isn't Mr. Burns who's behind everything. Um, After Marge and the fourth level, you then play as Apu in the fifth level, and he's sort of trying to come to grips with the fact that he's been selling this Buzz Cola at the Quickie Mart that became this blight on Springfield because it's turning people into zombies or zombie-esque, zombie-like people. You then play as Bart, then gets saved, and Bart you play as in level 6. And then finally, you play as Homer again in the final level, level 7. By that time, everyone has figured out that the big baddies of the game are, in fact, Kang and Kodos, and they have put forth all of these mechanical wasps to spy on the citizens of Springfield to beam up what essentially is a reality TV show to their home planet for their constituents or fellow aliens to watch and mock and the Simpsons town folk into you know uh, watching it, and that's that last mission that Tom was mentioned just now was you're driving back and forth to this power plant where you're picking up nuclear waste and having the aliens beam it up to their spaceship to blow it up. And then eventually they blow up and Kang and Kodos are like in some sort of heaven, and you're Springfield is saved.
That
Any
the whole Kang and Kodos like reality show thing, I felt it was very Simpsons
Yeah.
Yeah,
Simpsonsy.
I thought that was funny.
Yeah, no, that's a really good story.
They called it Foolish Earthlings, by the
Yeah.
way.
Foolish.
Yeah, and like so at
It's
the end,
so
it's like
Simpsons.
yeah, the Buzz Cola gets into the the water supply, and that's why there's like the zombies and stuff in that last level.
Right. Right. And then it's like, yeah, and it also I think that falls on Halloween, so it's like all of these ghost cars and stuff that you're driving up against and stuff. So it's
Yeah, I thought that level was, you know, maybe the repetitive missions notwithstanding, but just the setting of that level. I thought that was kind of cool.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was a
I was
cool,
like,
unique story. And
yeah,
honestly, I forgot about the Halloween connection to just now, but that really could have been a Treehouse of Horror episode.
oh yeah, definitely, and
I mean, a
especially
very
at the end.
long one, but I mean, it
Yeah,
was
especially near the end when it's
yeah.
hanging Kodos and
Yeah, and just
zombies.
like
Yeah,
your cola from the store zombifying
yeah,
people, like
yeah,
all of that. It's
yeah. No, definitely, definitely.
so I mean, I thought the story was very on point. It was, it lent itself to funny dialogue and situations and it was very Simpsons like. So they did a really good job with that.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about some of the favorite missions or toughest missions or?
Well, I had mentioned to you guys sort of behind the scenes that one of the toughest missions for me, one of them that I didn't beat was that mission with Apu. Um,
All right, he had to. He was like working with Snake. He had to like collect garbage. Oh, 'cause Snake's community service, I think he had to help
yeah,
him with.
yeah, he had to help
So he had to
him.
collect the garbage. Yeah. So I think at first you're chasing like garbage truck and you're
Yeah.
knocking
That
out
part
the
I did. It was just the last part of that mission. It was like a 3-part mission.
yeah. So the second part, you collect the trash that's already you're not knocking out of the truck,
Yeah.
and that you have to do a lot of it by foot,
Yeah,
right?
that was one of the feet one, I believe.
Yeah, one of the feet mission. And then the last part was the hardest part was getting back to I think
Yeah.
DMV or wherever you had to go. Like
Yeah, that
Yeah.
I just couldn't get to it in time, and I just got frustrated and
yeah,
skipped it eventually. But yeah, there's a lot of like there's another one of the other on foot missions when you're Marge collecting the Buzz Cola cans as Officer Marge, one of the costumes that you have to purchase
mm.
to progress the story. So, there was very few. That was one of them. I mean, I think there's one in that last Homer level as well. I definitely remember a part where you're
There's a
Homer, but maybe you were. I think you're supposed to do most of it in the car, like going up the fire truck ladder and all of that around Springfield.
oh yeah,
But there were portions of that where you have to get on top of like maybe Moe's or other buildings, so you have to be on foot
yeah.
for
There's
some
one
of
like
it.
maybe by the gas station, and then there was a mission that I think you had to, on foot that you had to get on top of like the school. I think
Yeah, I mean,
maybe,
I just wish there
but
were more on like on foot missions. To be honest,
yeah, I guess like I mentioned, I think we were all kind of surprised and not certainly not pleasantly surprised just how heavy it was with the vehicle missions, but it would have given more variety. I don't know if the foot missions are any more fun than the car ones. Like
well, they were more fun because I feel like the those controls are a lot clunkier than the car controls. I don't know if they just didn't put as much effort into it,
yeah,
or because I would feel if anything, it should be the other way around. But the it wasn't. So that was a little annoying. And I just think that a game that is part of it may be because a game that's meant for car driving, like it just seemed to take forever to get anywhere by foot. So
yeah. So
it's
that's one thing I wanted to mention that I thought was a positive. That was impressive. The levels were massive. They really were. Like it was only I guess three main levels, and then they kind of repeated. I think it was three, but they were really massive. And yeah, what you noticed it when you were not in a car.
yeah,
Like it did take, like you just said,
yeah.
it took you a long time just to get anywhere.
Yeah, so look, I mean, I think if you focus on the game for what it was, then it's impressive. But if you criticize the game for being too car heavy and not enough other types of missions and walking and stuff, then it sort of exacerbates that criticism, I think.
So the thing with is like every mission was timed, so it kind of had to be mostly
Art.
car driving based.
Well,
It's
I
Not
not it's
mean,
not
really.
it's not like
yeah.
GTA where you could the difficulty came from like the actual gameplay, not just having a clock shoved down your throat the whole time.
Yeah, well, I
Yeah,
mean,
but
you could make
if they
the
did one mission with a clock, they could have, on foot, they could have did 100.
yeah, I mean, they could have just made the time longer or more appropriate for how long it should take you.
Yeah, yeah. Or they could have
Yes.
not had a time constraint and you know, but God forbid they actually like, made some kind of significant change to a mission.
Yeah,
Allah forbid. No, but it's just like, what was supposed to be the threat? Like, I don't know. Was somebody supposed to have a gun and like you had a
Well,
baseball
then it
bat?
would
You
have
were,
been it would have really been like GTA then.
No,
yeah,
but you
exactly.
can change the missions where they don't have to be time based. I mean, it's not like that's the only mission ever. Whatever. It is what it is, but you don't not every mission has to be timed in a
Well,
game.
yeah, I mean, I guess in the game's current state, there was nothing else,
Yeah.
but they, could have not been lazy and added a different obstacle or threat or something to the game. But they didn't. They just said, okay, here's a clock, do it in this amount of time.
And
And
at the
next
end of
level,
it,
you do it in this amount of time, minus 10 seconds.
I don't think that would have been a problem if the game was a little shorter. I mean, that's
Yeah.
like I if you play like one of if you I don't know, if you play like the Marge level, like level 4 or the least level 3, I just play that level. Like you get a little bit of background on the game, you play that level, and it's like judge this game. I think people would be like, oh, this is really cool. I think it was just the repetitiveness and the length and some of the really difficult aspects as it scaled up. I think that served as
Yeah,
a turnoff.
it most certainly should have been shorter. They probably didn't need that Apu chapter.
Yeah, I mean it was cool. I mean he's one of the best non-Simpsons family characters, so it was cool
Well,
they
he
added him.
was.
Yeah. But like I said, I think they might have been better served with like
Yeah,
removing
less
one of
one
those
less time.
early Homer or Bart episodes. But probably the Homer episode because Bart gets captured, and that's sort of a big part of the early story. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So back on the missions. Sorry. The one that you were talking about with Apu and collecting the trash. I actually watched a YouTube video of somebody doing that just to get the correct path back to the DMV. So like one thing I didn't like was, or the I think it was DMV, wherever you had to go. One of the things I didn't like was like the multi-phase missions. It was like if you failed in the second or third phase, you had to start from the beginning, which kind of stunk. So it was just like you had to go through for that one in particular, chasing down the garbage truck and attacking it to have it drop the garbage, then collecting all the other stuff, going on foot, going on car, and then like you finally got to the part where it's like, okay, now I gotta find my way back. And it was just like you had to go through so much just to get to that part again. It was like that frustrates me. Like I
yeah,
already completed this, you know?
yeah, that was annoying. It's just like I'm always torn about like new games being too easy and then stuff like that though, and it's just like
Yeah,
because it's
that
funny. I to your point, Pete, I like found myself doing because that happened a lot in that game, even for missions I completed in total. And like, but I felt myself getting sort of better at learning the shortcuts and everything for those earlier portions of a mission, so that those almost became like, okay, I'm definitely gonna beat this part this time. And then it just
yes,
had, it just
because
went
those
out.
were the first ones. So like,
Yeah, you got to keep playing it. If
yeah,
you kept playing number 1 and 2, if you kept losing on 3. So there. What I'm saying is that there was this opportunity to get better in most of the missions. I feel. Well, I guess they were in all of them, but I found some of them to be like frustratingly hard, and maybe having that skipped option wasn't a good thing because if I had just been forced to stick with it, I might have just beaten it.
yeah, probably. And I'm sure the mission that you didn't complete in the Bart episode, the Bart level, was the one where you have to, I guess, destroy the laser gun stands.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so you have to like you start like getting at Krusty Blue Studios, and you have to destroy all the laser gun
Yes,
stands.
yes.
And then the second part is you had to return back to Krusty Blue Studios.
Yeah. Yeah, when
Yeah,
you have to drive on the highway, it got so confusing to me. Like that
yeah,
was so much more difficult than driving around town.
yeah. And it wasn't just like a straight path; like there were
No.
turns and curves you could make.
Yeah. I mean, that whole so like part of the game it's like it's challenging, but it really was just a matter of like figuring out what panes of glass you could jump the car through to cut off 5 seconds of a route and
Yeah, it really
like
was learning the maps and learning
yeah.
the shortcuts. Like, but in that mission, so that was another one I also looked on YouTube to see, and that one there's like a little bit of like a trick, kind of. I don't know. I don't know if this was intentional by the developers, but the timer would reset to I think it was 50 seconds after the first part was done. So after you collected all the laser gun stands. So regardless if you had 20 seconds left or 1 second left, it would
Mhm.
like reset to 50 and then you had to get back to the Krusty Lou Studios. So the trick was actually to skip one of the stands, like to not collect it. Basically go through the end and then make your way back and then pick up that last one. So then you would be closer to Krusty Lou Studios when it reset to that 50 seconds or whatever. Is
Oh
that clear
wow.
or no?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
so
Uh,
hmm.
I thought of trying to do that, but I couldn't get back to the. I guess I was probably leaving, like skipping the first one, which was stupid.
Oh yeah, it's stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to
Has
assess
to be
which
somewhere
one
in
is
between. Yeah.
the one that you could get with the least amount of time
Is
for
that
that
like
first stage,
Yeah.
is that like
first
the only
phase.
way to beat it?
I don't think that's the only way to beat it. And there's also like a shortcut in like by the I think it's like the beginning of the boardwalk area. It's like a really tight,
Mhm.
I think, staircase basically, and it goes up to where this I think the sea captain was standing or whatever. Anyway, so like that's a not obvious like shortcut that maybe you did or
Yeah.
didn't miss. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, but those were the two that I noted as being the two most difficult missions. Was the two that you didn't complete basically,
Yeah, yeah. The last
and
mission
then
was tough
and
too.
then the last one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those are the three I didn't complete. I
So
mean,
I had mentioned when I played this game when it was first released that I wasn't able to complete the last mission. So just that, and then also just reading about the game, like Reddit or whatever else. A lot of people like basically say like had a similar story where they got up to the last mission and couldn't complete it. So I was quite like fearful of it, but it only took me about like 30 minutes and I was able to beat it.
how many times did you like have to replay it?
I I don't know, 30 minutes worth or whatever that is. So
Tom, did you beat it this time around?
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. That last mission took me a little while. I don't remember how long, but by far the longest one was that Bart one that we were just talking about. That took me the longest out of anything in the game.
So did you use that trick that Pete mentioned or no?
No,
Because
no.
oh, if not, then I guess it is possible to
I,
beat it without
I
that. Then.
I did this. I used the shortcut and at the boardwalk.
Mm.
yeah, that was key.
Yeah.
Should we kind of went a little out of order, but should we talk about our thoughts on replay value on this? Oh, I mentioned
Yes.
it, so we have to.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys consider the collecting replay value.
It's
Tom
not.
shaking his head.
It's not. It's not replay value.
But what do
So
you consider replay value? Like, oh, here's
Starting
a
starting a new
here's a
game. Starting a new
yeah,
game.
okay,
That's what.
now do it on a harder difficulty. Now do it with a shotgun, unlimited ammo. Like I like if the game is fun, I might play it again. If the game's
Re-
not fun, I'm not gonna play it again.
Replay value is like the cave, where you can replay it again with completely different characters and have a completely different experience.
That I argue is not replaying the game. To me, I wanted to play through each character once.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
then that's when I beat the game once I got everyone's story.
that's not the
yeah,
best example, but like something like Elden Ring, where you can play through the entire game with in magic build, and then you the replay value would come from playing as a strength build or a dexterity build. Like that's replay value when you're replaying the game.
yeah.
Doing
I don't think this
doing
one
stuff. No,
has
there's no.
much of replay value.
There's
And
not.
like honestly, the collectibles were cool, but like they didn't really do much. It was just like you got this card. It's not like it gave you any sort of benefit. It's not like it played out
No,
a scene. It was just like literally a still image of something from the show.
but okay. So actually, if you collect all the cards, um, you would. So if you collect all the cards in a particular level, you would unlock that level's track in like race track or whatever. And like there was like this. I don't even know if you guys realize this. It was really lame, but there's basically like a bonus multiplayer mode in the main menu option. And it's like a race, but they should have just made it like, in my opinion, like split screen and racing kind of in the same setting that you're racing in the game. But it was like this lame like overhead still view, and you were just like racing around the track. Like it was so dumb. So anyway, so if you collect all the cards in a particular level, then you unlock that level's bonus track. Then if you collect all the cards in all the levels, then you could bring them to the android's dungeon and trade all of them in the complete set for like that Itchy and Scratchy movie that's, if you maybe noticed or didn't notice, is in the android's dungeon in like a case. It was the
Uh,
unreleased 500 or unreleased episode called the 500 yard gash. Um, And then if you bring that to the movie theater, it basically plays like a 1-minute movie.
Ah,
Yeah, which is kind of cool.
That's
Itchy
cool.
injects
Yeah.
Scratchy with steroids as like the race is about to begin, and then just as Scratchy is about to cross the finish line, his heart explodes, and then Itchy wins. It's kind of funny.
so dumb.
I feel like, Ant, you're not a fan of Itchy and
Yeah, it's
Scratchy.
like the one thing I don't like of The Simpsons. I understand why it's there though.
Yeah, it's funny. So anyway, so you did get that.
That's cool. I like when they.
Yeah, you have to get something for the collectibles, I feel. Otherwise, it really diminishes the replay value. Though I don't
In
necessarily
general,
agree with Tom where that's not replay value at all, but it certainly, diminishes the value if you don't get anything.
To me, replay value is I beat the game, but I'm still turning it on to do things,
Yeah.
to play it. Now maybe I'm not replaying the story, but I'm replaying the levels to do a different objective.
yeah, yeah. I don't know that that's actually the definition of replay value. That's probably something else. But yeah, I mean, it is a worthy thing to discuss for a game.
Yeah, so there were a couple of other cool things, like, well, I don't know how cool these are, but like, if the internal clock on the GameCube showed it was like Christmas or Halloween or something, like the main menu would have, I think it was like Homer's like on the couch or whatever.
Yeah.
So he would have like a Santa hat if it was Christmas
Ah.
or kind of thing. So yeah, like in 2003 or whatever he said this was released, those kind of things were kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely. They played a lot with that internal clock. All right, let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right, for this week's mid-episode filler, we thought we'd do something similar that we did with the South Park Stick of Truth episode and pick 3 quotes that we discussed earlier and ask the listeners what they think their favorite is. We'll put up the poll after we ask the question today on our Instagram and X accounts. Those are at Bros Boss Battles. That's BROS Boss Battles. Make sure to visit there as well as our website, brothersandbossbattles.com. And subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcast. So the first quote that we'd like to highlight is when Marge is scoping things out in town and comes across Cletus and asks about certain crop circle images, and Cletus responds with, "My granddad saw one of those crop circle things you were talking about, but he's with Allah now." The second one we'd like to highlight is from Chief Wiggum when he goes, "Strike 2, running over an elderly person without a license." And the third we'd like to point out is from Comic Book Bot. And he goes, video games, what a waste of money. Now to go online and bid $1,000 for itchy and scratchy corn cob holders. So let us know what you think. I didn't try to not read them out in the characters' voices because I'd probably screw it up. But the quotes are golden just as is. Give us your thoughts again on X and Instagram at Bros Boss Battles, and we'll reveal the winner of those 3 quotes. Of course, if you'd like to highlight another quote that we maybe didn't talk about today, please do so in the comments. All right, now back to the episode. All right, Pete, I think you wanted to enlighten us on a few other facts and information about the game, so go ahead.
Yeah. Well, okay, so just kind of talk about not so much the development, but more of the development of a sequel, which, as we know, never came to fruition, and a lot of people on the internet clamor for. But the game was very successful. So it sold about 8 to 10 million copies, and so a person who would know basically estimated about 85% of those copies were sold at full price.
Are we not allowed to know who this person is?
No, we're allowed to know. So, okay, so there is an interview floating around on the internet with like a bunch of, and I forget who hosted the interview, but includes a bunch of people from different teams that worked on the game, basically. So it was quite interesting. If you're interested in this game at all, I think it's like an hour long interview. It's pretty entertaining, informative. So anyway, I forget we are allowed to know who this is, and if you go on the internet, you could find that out. But I forgot what his role specifically was.
Alright.
So anyway, so it was very successful. So it was basically like a foregone conclusion that there was going to be a sequel, and there was a sequel that was in very very early stages of development. And so around that same time, there was a proposal out to Vivendi to publish 5 games, 5 more Simpsons-based games, and one of them would be a sequel to Hit and Run. And it was like a very, I don't know, appetizing proposal. Like I think it was like basically the cost to publish this game they were going to get 5 games out of or something. So anyway, long story short, Vivendi declined to publish these games, and it was like, I don't know, to this day, or at least to the day of whenever that interview was conducted, the the whole team and the developers were like just baffled by that decision. Um,
And they couldn't find a different like publisher.
yeah. So I guess shortly after that, I think it was 2005. Um, EA bought the exclusive video game licensing rights to The Simpsons, and I guess they went in different directions. So you remember the Simpsons game called The Simpsons Game was released in 2007, I think, which was around the time that the Simpsons movie was coming out.
Mm.
Um,
Wow, it's been that long. Ooh.
yeah, yeah. All the exact politics, I guess, is not that clear to me, but I think because EA had different thoughts on the direction of the game, basically. But I
Yeah, that's
also
interesting.
know, like,
I wonder what they would have done with the sequel. Like we've
yeah,
talked, we've all had different levels of agreement on the repetitiveness of it. Some of us more than others, but considering that a detriment. But I feel they would have had to change things up significantly to make a sequel work and be as successful as this one. Perhaps with more like on foot missions or something.
yeah. No, you're right. It would have been interesting to see, but I guess we never will. Um, but it is interesting to note, like, that, and we've noted this many times already, that the real original voice actors voiced these characters in the game. And so, as you guys know, and a lot of our audience probably knows as well, a lot of the actors voice many different characters in The Simpsons.
Yeah.
So, they would come in for the whole day and just do line after line. And like there was a story with like the actor who does Homer and Groundskeeper Willie and Krusty and a lot of other
Dan
um
Castellaneta.
yeah, him. Like he would have to do Krusty at the end because like that was taxing on his voice.
Right.
Just I just wonder, like, I don't know. I just feel like that would be I'm sure it was costly back then to have the Simpsons license and all the voice actors
Yeah.
and everything, but I just feel like that is almost, I don't know, on another scale nowadays.
Maybe. Yeah. But I mean, this also wasn't nowadays when the sequel was supposed to come out. So,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's not
It
like they're
wasn't
doing
nowadays. Yeah.
still a good 15 years ago. So,
Yeah. And then one
yeah.
other thing I want to just mention was uh one of the biggest problems I had with the game was not necessarily the difficulty scaling in those last few levels, but the cost of the costumes and the cars in those last levels just became astronomical.
Yeah. There was a lot of just coin collecting, which was kind of a boring part of the game.
Yeah, and like we mentioned, there were crates and the wasps and things that you could get the coins from, but
Hmm.
otherwise it was really like
Yeah.
coin here, coin there,
Yeah.
and you know,
And hope you don't get caught by the police. 'Cause then
Yeah,
that,
exactly. So then you have to like go inside a building and let your hit run meter go all the way down to, and then
yeah.
do it again.
It would have been cool if they maybe allowed the collectibles to be sold for coins, and that would have incentivized more collectible collecting, and also made it less burdensome to get coins, which again was otherwise a pretty boring part of the game.
Yeah. I feel like the gags we didn't mention, but those are just little things in the levels that you would click on and something
Oh,
funny
like
would happen real quick.
yeah, that's true. That was another sort of quote unquote a collectible.
Collectible, yeah.
Yeah,
But
those were
maybe
cool.
those could have gave you more coins, like to make it
Yeah, yeah,
more motivating to try to find them all.
right. Because even like killing those or breaking those wasp cameras and stuff, like that was part of the things you would do in a level to increase your completion score. So, that like all of those things could have maybe given more coins. I mean, at the end of the day, it was more boring than like overly burdensome. Like I didn't have a problem getting, I wouldn't say I had a problem getting everything I needed to. It's just they could have made that part of the game much more interesting than they did.
No, to get what you needed to, like you mentioned, certain missions you required a certain vehicle or a certain costume. That
Hmm.
was okay, but to collect everything
Oh
in those
yeah,
last couple of stages was burdensome.
yeah, I
There's
could see
actually
that.
like I don't want to call it a glitch. I don't think it's technically a glitch, just maybe an oversight. But if you were within a mission and then you were hitting let's say you were hitting those crates that would what are they, buzz cola crates? And
Yeah.
they would release coins every time you hit it. So like, you would hit them you could hit them 3 times before they break. And each time you hit it, they would release coins for you to collect. So if you basically would hit the crate twice, collect those coins, if you were doing this within a mission and then cancel the mission, the coins that you collected wouldn't reset. You would
Ah.
keep those coins, but the counter on the box would reset. So then you could
Oh.
redo the mission and hit it another 2 times. So that's kind of
Ah.
like a cheap way. It's still certainly not fun, but
No.
it's a cheap way to get coins a little quicker.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so that was that. So the only other thing I feel like if you're prepared, you guys to mention are our stats.
I am not prepared.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
I did basically the bare minimum in this
Oh,
game.
okay.
I mean, I found some of the like collectible cards
yeah.
and destroyable wasps
Hmm.
Yeah.
just from playing, but I made no effort to like seek these out.
Yeah.
Uh,
Same here. Along with not completing 3 of the game missions, the only extra thing I did that required any sort of effort was one of the races, as I mentioned. And yeah, again, sort of just by randomness, broke some of the wasp cameras, collected some of the cards, and I think did a few of the gags, but I have a pretty bare minimum completion level on this.
oh, okay. Yeah, so I mentioned I think earlier that I did a lot of this stuff. So I
Yeah.
completed every mission, including the one bonus mission in each level, and there was 3 DMV races in each level. I did all those. Basically, after I completed all the missions, I would spend some time in each level to try to get a few more wasp cameras or cards or whatever. But I wasn't really trying to get all of them. That would have been too cumbersome for me. But my percentages completed in the first 4 levels ranged from 87.5 to 97.1%. Then
Yeah.
my level 5, 6, and 7 was 86, 80, and 82.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I wasn't close to those numbers.
Yeah, and if I just collected more coins, I could have gotten those last few levels up even higher.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the totality of that is, but as I mentioned, my original playthrough when the game was first released, I had 93.9% complete.
Yeah. That's pretty good.
So yeah, so I had fun with the game. Clearly.
Yeah, like you mentioned initially, you didn't beat the last mission, but had you done that, that probably would have brought that up even further.
I'm sure it would have, yes.
Yeah, but I just wonder how much. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's Captain Obvious. All right, if there's nothing else more to add, maybe we should give our final thoughts and recommendations on this game. You guys cool with that?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right, Pete, go first. I
Yeah, why
think
don't I continue? I really like the game. I will say before replaying this game, I consider this to be in my top list of games, and we do this all the time. I don't know if it's a top 10 or a top 20, whatever you want to call it. But I having that as the bar, oh, this is my top 20 game of all time. I don't think it quite met my expectations or my memories from 20 years ago. So I will say that to be fair, but I do want to impress on the audience that I think this is a really fun game. Um, if you have any sort of affinity towards The Simpsons, it certainly well, I haven't played every single Simpsons game, but I would not be surprised that this is in fact the best Simpsons game ever made, video game.
yeah, we'll
Eh,
have to maybe do a bonus levels episode on Simpsons games or something like that. But
yeah, yeah, that'd be fun. No, just real quick, like I said, like I just like the aspect of not having to mosey around and figure out what to do. Like you're given challenges and you gotta figure out, you have to have this, hone your skill to beat it, or you gotta figure out, some strategy or some shortcut and do it and conquer it. And that's what I like about this game.
would you recommend it?
No, I would, of course, yes. I'm saying I really like the game. Yes, I recommend it.
All right, I'll go next. I like this game. I don't like it as much as Pete did. Uh, I, I think dwelled on the flaws a little bit more. I wasn't so enamored with like the game where I felt much of a need to certainly do any of the collecting, but also even complete some of the missions. Though I would like to go back just to officially do it myself, at least for the main game missions. But it's a fun game. The Simpsons sort of has a pretty wide appeal, I feel, even, uh, with some of its dry humor and commentary and stuff. So I think it can hit a pretty wide audience. The characters and the levels are colorful and interesting and quirky. So that's all pretty cool. The game is fun. Again, my main criticism, I think if this game was a level or a level and a half shorter, it would be a pretty solid game overall. I think it just does get a little repetitive and is a little rough around the edges on some of the missions. But as Pete said, it's one of those things where you could practice, and if you are willing to devote the time, you can find shortcuts and work at it and beat it. So. Uh, while not as strong as Pete's endorsement, I do also recommend that the listeners go out and play it if you haven't played it already. Tom, bring us home.
Yeah, so I I can't recommend this at all, honestly. Even if you're a big fan of the big fan of The Simpsons, I think you're better off just watching your favorite episodes from the 90s. Um, yeah, I don't know. I had fun maybe or I had some you know some bit of fun for like maybe an hour in this game, and then that was kind of it for me. It was downhill from there. And I'm I'm honestly really curious because you see this game on lists like people will post on Twitter or sorry X and say what was the best game of 2020 or sorry of 2003, and it'll have a bunch of games released in that year, and this one's on there, and it just really confuses me how someone can honestly say that this was the best game released in that year.
Well, I guess it would be
It doesn't
relative to
surprise
the
me.
it'd be relative to the other games released
Yeah,
that year,
yeah,
but
for sure. But like
I'm sure
to
there were
to
other good games that
to
year.
to think of this as a game of the year contender is just kind of mind-boggling to me. And I think a lot of people are viewing this game with the nostalgia glasses.
Maybe also the Simpsons glasses.
Yeah, maybe that too. But so anyway, nah, I wouldn't recommend this at all. And the Simpsons arcade game is way better than this. So
Oh,
that's the best Simpsons game of all time, not this trash.
and just one of the top games of 2003 is Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic. So that
Yeah, I mean, how could you pick this
I
over
must
that?
I need look no further. Not to give anything away that might be in a future episode of Brothers and Boss Battles, but anyway, so all right, that's no recommendation from Tom. All right, that'll about do it. Thanks everyone for listening. Again, catch us on X and Instagram at Bros Boss Battles. That's BROS Boss Battles. Visit our website at brothersandbossbattles.com and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Be sure to check in the next episode where we will be discussing our third and final game of the video games based on 90s cartoons category. And that'll be followed by our Bro Down, where the 3 games will go up against each other. All right, everyone, have a good one. Thanks for listening.